Hello everyone, welcome to Barbecue Elevated. Today what I'm going to be doing is a pork butt which is right down here. Going to be doing that on the PitBoss Pellet Grill today. I want to do a comparison to see how the PitBoss does with making a pork butt compared to my Franklin, which I would normally use. I'm also going to do a little bit of an experiment today. I'm going to use this new Apple BBQ rub by Big Daddy Hills. Want to go ahead and try this one out. Excited for it. I love Big Daddy Hills' sauce. I've used some of their rubs before, but I've never used it on a pork butt before. And Lee over at Big Daddy Hills recommends that I give it a try on a pork butt, so I'm going to do that today. One thing I want to point out with this pork butt is I'm really happy with the way that this one looks because the fat cap goes all the way over the top. It completely covers it. As you can see here, it's what I really always look for whenever I'm picking out a pork butt. Something just like that, just fat that covers all the way over the top of it. Just going to use yellow mustard as my binder, which is a pretty typical binder, and then we'll get it in the pellet grill. Going to start out at 230 degrees. Let it sit in there for a while until I get to the point I'm going to wrap it. Once it's into the stall, that's when I'll be wrapping it. But anyways, going to go ahead and get started with this. What I'll do actually is make it really, go into just really be very generous with how much rub I'm using, because with a pork butt, there's really no, you can't over season a pork butt simply because there is no natural flavor to them. So just go ahead and just cake on as much seasoning as you want. You know, if this was like a brisket or a beef or something like that, I typically try to limit it because I don't want to like overpower the natural flavoring of the beef itself. But with this, since there is a natural flavoring, we're just trying to give it flavoring through the smoke and through the rub. And hopefully when we pull it apart, all this extra rub just kind of falls down into the actual meat. Make it nice and good. So this is just an old bottle of the Apple barbecue rub that I've got. My son loves apples, so I'm sure he'll be happy for it. And then we'll just put another little thin layer of mustard on the top here. And then just be, again, very generous with how much rub we're going to apply. Can't over season a pork butt, just isn't possible. And then we'll be sure to get the sides, get everything completely covered. Okay, so there it is. Now we'll go ahead and get it into the PitBoss and get it cooking until we're ready to wrap it. Then we'll be back to check on it. All right, so it's been about 4 hours since I put this in. Just out here to check on it real quick. So it's got a reddish color, but most of that coloring is just from the actual rub though. I'm kind of surprised, like there's no blackening or anything. So definitely compared to the Franklin, like there's not really much of a bark forming, not really much of a change happening. It's just becoming a deeper red, which is really kind of more a reflection of the actual rub than it is being in the pellet grill. So one thing I've noticed in the difference so far is that, like, it definitely does not have the same kind of color change that I would expect to have from an actual smoker, at least not compared to my Franklin offset. So there it is. There's the update for us. One more quick peek at the pork butt before we pull it out and wrap it. It's about 165 degrees right now. It's definitely hit its stall. The top is starting to kind of like bubble up a little bit, which is what I always look for. That fat starts to bubble up, or sometimes it'll even split. This one's a little bit thick, so I don't know that it's necessarily going to split, but it's definitely thick, so it's bubbling, it's starting to expand. This one is definitely time to get wrapped. Again, a little bit disappointed with the coloring. There's not a whole lot of bark being formed on this thing like I would expect from my Franklin. But again, it's a PitBoss, it's a pellet smoker. I don't really expect it to perform the same, but just one of the differences that I'm noticing is the coloring is really more to the rub than it is the actual smoke from the pellet smoker. Anyways, I'm going to close this lid and get ready to wrap. All right, so we're back again. Meat hit the stall. It's actually a little bit past the stall now, so we're going to go ahead and just get it wrapped up real quick. One thing I like to do is use cider vinegar to kind of make sure it doesn't get too dried out. Cider vinegar does a good job of breaking down proteins, helps to keep meat moist and tender. So what I always do is I already spritz the foil I spritz the foil before I put the meat on, and then we'll just go ahead and hit the meat. And then just so for reference, it's at 166 is the internal temp on this thing right now. So now we got that sprayed. Then it's just a matter of just wrapping it up. So it's not rocket science. You just kind of want to make it wrapped as tight as possible. Put the shiny side of the foil in towards the meat so the dull side is out. That way we're not reflecting heat away. There we go. Now it's wrapped up. So now what I'll do is just throw it back in. I'm going to put it back into the pellet grill. Bump up the temp a little bit to about 250 is where we're going to go on the temperature. Cook it until it hits somewhere around like 200 to 203 degrees for the internal temp. Just going to go off of the probe test where I just stick a probe in here up top, a little meat probe, and just kind of feel around. See if you can stick it in and it's like butter, then it's done. If not, then you keep cooking it. So go ahead and throw this back in, and then we'll come back later to show you when it's done. Okay, so we're just coming outside now to go ahead and check this to see if it's done. So what I do, just kind of run the probe down in there. It's just a meat thermometer probe, and just kind of run it through. And if it all comes out nice and smooth and easy, like there's a lot of it you got to notice is on the pullback. When you go to pull it out, is it like sliding right out, or is there like some type of grab or tension that's trying to restrict you? So with this, it's all just going right in, right out. So this one is totally done. It's at about 203.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So right where I expected it to be. Going to go ahead and pull this one out and let it rest. All right, so we got our pulled pork, our pork butt here. It's all done, smoked. It's been resting, and now we're going to go ahead and try it out and test it. One thing that I noticed is that there wasn't a whole lot of juice that came out of this one compared to like my Frank one. Like this thing will usually be like. These are quarter full of juice after I unwrap it, but this one it wasn't. So I don't know if it's because of the offset, like the heat's not direct, it comes from the side, and so maybe it doesn't dry out as fast. And the pellet grill it's underneath, and that little cup in the bottom, so maybe that dries it out. I don't know. Maybe it isn't dried out. Maybe just moisture stayed inside the meat, but definitely didn't have as much in the pan as what my offset would have. We're going to go ahead and just kind of do like a quick test right here. I've done this, so definitely looks like it's pretty much done. Bone came right out, no problem. Meat just coming right off of it. Exactly what we want to see for that. So that's really good. Going to go ahead and just shred this thing up. And again, not a whole lot of bark with this thing though, so kind of disappointed by that. Normally there'd be a lot more bark to this, but with this one, like most of this coloring is just from the actual rub itself, not from any of the bark.
The apple rub.
Yeah, the apple rub. But I got my taste tester here. He's my meat kid that loves meat, so I'm going to use him to test this thing and see what he thinks and how it compares to the Franklin pulled pork that we normally do, the shredded pork. So there you go. It doesn't really smell very smoky either, to be honest, compared to normal. What do you think?
Tastes a lot like pork chops.
Yeah? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, it tastes good. It tastes fine. It tastes moist. It doesn't taste like it's dried out at all. Definitely no smoke flavor to it.
It's pretty bussin'.
Yeah, you can taste the rub. So that apple rub, it tastes pretty good. I really like the apple rub a lot. It's not overpowering or anything like that, but you can definitely taste it and know that it's there.
Hey, apples are relatively good when it comes to food.
Yeah.
Because apples are good.
Well, especially with pork. But it's not like overly salty either or anything like that. Get some of these big pieces of pork fat out. But, you know, really easy just to shred it. Just kind of use the tongs here. It's just shredding right apart. So as far as like that goes, it's pretty normal. Definitely looks plenty moist, that's for sure. I think it's turned out to be really good. So definitely like the flavor of it. I could say compared to the Franklin, doesn't have quite as much juice built up in the actual pan. Didn't have as much of a smoky flavor to it. Didn't create as much of a bark. But as far as like the meat and the flavor of the meat and how it tastes, how it turned out, I think it turned out pretty well. It's definitely tender, definitely worked well. Definitely something that I would maybe try again. So maybe we'll experiment with different rubs, see if we can get a bit better bark for in the future.
What I'm really waiting for is Easter, because when you make that ham, because remember last time I tasted ham from you, you said you would make it glazed next time. I remember that. That was last year's Easter.
Yeah, we'll be making a ham again, and we'll try some kind of glaze this year, I guess, to see what we can do. Forgot about that glazed
Because
part.
I love ham. It's one of my favorite meats because it's just pretty bussin'.
Yep, that's true. You love ham, so yeah. But anyways, we'll get going here. Start eating this thing. If you guys have any comments or any questions or anything I could try differently with doing a pork butt on a pellet grill, I'd love to hear it. Pretty hard to mess up a pork butt, but if there's any other method you guys do that maybe help get better bark or whatever, I'd be happy to hear that. So until next time, we'll catch you later.